Hi, welcome to the fifth session. In the fourth session, we discussed about legal codes and the kind of regulatory influence that they have on the human beings. In this session, we are going to speak about moral codes. Moral codes, by definition, are not as coercive. In fact, they are much less coercive relative to the legal codes. And they are far more subtle, but they're there. Make no mistake of it. Their influence is very, very high. Now, if you remember, I had mentioned about a hypothetical case in the previous session. If you were stranded on an uninhabited or a desolate kind of an island where there is no one other than you, what will be the use of ethics for you, or values, or morality for you? Nothing. You don't have any value for them because there are no other human beings. You're the only one. So, by definition, morality is a social construct. Effectively, what it means is that morality comes into play only when there are other human beings with whom you will have to relate. But there are also people who, while being a part of a society, they go by this, these teenagers sometimes use this expression called my way or highway, that kind of a thing. They're a part of the society, but they display signs of rebelliousness and they don't want to comply or conform to any of those moral codes of a society. So, how do we deal with them? In extreme cases, it will be known as ASPD, that is antisocial personality disorder, which is actually a clinical case, that is, clinical psychology would be interested in dealing with them. Or in the worst case, it will become a criminal case. Either it's a clinical case or it's a criminal case. In clinical cases, they will require some kind of a treatment. And that is the domain of psychiatry. So this antisocial personality disorder, people who suffer from this kind of ASPD are uh, they do not have any use for the social norms or the morality prevailing morals of that particular society. They could be deviant, they could be aggressive, and they could be even violent, and they may be prone even to substance abuse, and basically they are slowly moving away from the society without even they being aware of it. So this irresponsible set of people uh, who are not a who are, while being a part of the society, don't want to have anything to do with that society. I mean, that is a kind of lot. But we're not discussing, I don't want to discuss too much about them because ASPD is not my principal purpose why we are discussing with. Basic idea that I want you to know is that if you are a part of a society, there is a certain order, there is a certain moral order which is more or less codified, sometimes written down, sometimes not written down, but there is a wide prevalent understanding of what these codes seek to convey. So people are aware and then they generally comply. And some kind of a socialization process takes place right from the time one is a child. I remember when I was in the school, uh, there used to be a class called moral science. Once in a week, they used to hold that. In that class, usually the missionaries used to come, missionary brothers, sisters, basically religious people, they used to come. And then they used to take sessions on morality, moral science, that is. Somewhere there was a belief that these two are integrated, that is, religion and morality were integrated. And well, I don't agree with that view, but from the ancient times, apparently, this is how it was designed. Even the great Hammurabi, about whom I had mentioned to you in probably my last session, who had who was the one of the finest emperors of his time, way back in 18th century prior to Christ. He had come up with that code, despite the fact that he was one of those very powerful emperors. Even he had to invoke the power and the mystique of God by saying that this God, Shamash, has given him. Shamash was, I think, a sun god. He had given him that particular code, and therefore he's just a messenger who is handing it over to the people of the people of his country. And he's not alone. Again, Moses, the man who had come back by saying that this is the word of God. When he spoke about the Mosaic Decalogue, or the Ten Commandments, that is. So he said that these are the words of God, and then I'm conveying it to you. I'm just a messenger. And why did they have to invoke uh, gods for more temporal activities? It's because if it is the word of God, it's more likely that people will conform, people will comply. But if it is not, those days probably, and even now also to an extent, that somewhere people believe in this word of God somewhere, and then they follow that. And even to date, uh, there is still a class of people that believes that ethics should not be an independent field of study. In fact, it should be a branch of theology. Well, I don't believe in it at all. I will have serious grievance about that, because the foundation, uh, the foundational principles behind any religion are either the fear or the greed. Uh, Fear of getting roasted in hell, or the greed of having a nice time in heaven. So, if we have these two as the foundations for evolving any moral principle, that would be subject to argument and discussion, definitely, because any rational thinker will ask questions as to what you're saying. Is it really well founded? The answer is possibly no, because these are all notions with limited validity. Not many people will agree with this kind of notions. So, therefore, uh, people have uh, invoked, all right, at some point of time, it probably even had currency. People did believe in those. But now rational thinkers will no longer agree with this kind of viewpoints. So now it's been debunked. Now religion has not much place in the field of ethics, at least as of today. Okay, now let's move forward. Any person who is a member of a society, why would he subject himself to these moral codes? Why would he do that? Out of a certain genuine understanding that if I violate these codes, my neighbor also will do, his neighbor also will do. So if everyone starts violating these codes, there will be huge chaos. Life itself will be disrupted. You cannot trust anyone. Any society has to be bound together through morality. In fact, there was a very famous author who had said that Morality is like cement in an edifice. It's not visible, but the building stands. The society stands based on morality. And the building will crumble if there is no cement or some binding material, whichever it is. For me, it makes a lot of sense. So any building will stand only when it is constructed properly. And now today, so many people lament that the moral standards of the society are declining, and that is a cause for worry. I tend to agree with that. That's partly because our education system also is not well grounded on the foundational principles on which this entire edifice has to stand tomorrow. The edifice of education, educated set of people who have to run this country in times to come. And so, very recently, I heard that the UGC has insisted on at least I think 2 credits to be studied by PhD students, especially on a subject called publication ethics. People are doing plagiarism. They copy, paste, and then put it all together, and then submit thesis, and then they get PhDs. And tomorrow they once again go back to the classes and then they start teaching. Now, what kind of moral foundation these people have? So that's why UGC, I think as recent as yesterday or day before yesterday, they have made this announcement, which is, I think, a very sound thing to do. But it should not start at that stage. In fact, I would think that it should start right from class 5 or class 6 or something like that. So from then onwards, it has to be. Morality is not built up. The foundations are not built. If the foundations are not built when you're young, it will become very difficult for you to absorb them at a later stage. Anyway, that is one thing. Now let us talk about the codes, the very principal purpose why we are here. Now, in terms of size, not in terms of importance, I would like to place before you at least 3 types of codes. One is the one that is applicable at the level of a family, that's called family codes or family constitution. For want of a better word, I'm using the word family constitution. The second one at a higher level in terms of the size, that is the segments of the society. They are the professions, which will have professionals like the doctors, the lawyers, the engineers. These are the people, the chartered accountants. They are the ones who form the society at large. Each one of them has to have his own set of codes. They do have. Then at a much higher level, we have a national code that would be called as the constitution. Not all parts of it. We're not going to talk about the rights and responsibilities, etc. Not the fundamental rights or the directive principles of state policy or anything like that. We're going to speak about just the preamble. Okay, now let us start from the family. Family is the foundation stone for any society. In fact, all the essential values we expect a citizen to possess are actually formed, nurtured, and built in a family. Sharing, caring, nurturing, protecting, educating, all these are ingredients of a family's responsibilities. So there is an organization called WANGO, WANGO, World Association of Non-Governmental Organizations. After a long consultation process, which is at an international level, they had so many meetings, and they came up with this code called the family code. So there, everything is listed down. Like, I mean, what are the responsibilities of grandparents? What are the roles and responsibilities of grandparents, parents, children, and grandchildren, etc. In fact, they did a phenomenal work in finding out or teasing out the patterns of harmonious families across the world. They did their research and they teased out these commonalities of harmonious families. They found out what harmonious families are going to look like. And then they also attempted to find out those common patterns. And then they built up a huge document, a nice document. And that document also could be customized according to the requirements, uniqueness of each and every society. Now, the values that we expect a citizen to possess, they are already there. That's about the family codes. So let's move up a little bit. Let's go to the segments. Now let's talk about, say, medical doctors. You must have heard of this Hippocrates oath. Hippocrates. Hippocrates is the name of that person, a Greek physician, 460 BC to 540. So he lived about 90 years. He came up with this code called the Hippocrates oath. Every medical professional, as he passes out and he steps into the field and then starts treating people, patients, he is supposed to undertake this oath, which is essentially meant to see to it that this doctor doesn't harm any patients who are under distress, doesn't exploit any patient who is vulnerable. Doctors, in fact, even the best doctors in best hospitals, even till date, they place this Hippocrates oath on the wall, uh, in a very conspicuous place, so that every doctor keeps looking at it and reminds himself of his responsibilities on a daily basis. These Hippocrates oath is more or less like a code of conduct, and it constantly reminds a doctor of his responsibilities. So like that, we have other professions like engineers, they have engineering ethics. Nurses, they do a very delicate and important service to the people. So they also have nursing ethics. Administrators, the potential ones like you and others who are serving, that is, they are also supposed to follow a set of ethics called the administrative ethics. And in addition to that, civil servants also have their own respective codes of conduct which they are supposed to follow, failing which they could be charged and there could be a departmental proceeding initiated against them. So all these codes, they help. Under several circumstances, they help us. Suppose if you are a civil servant and someone who is related to you is coming to you and then saying that, look, please get my son a job because you're in a position of power and where you could use your influence and then get this job for my son. And in the absence of any code of conduct, it will become difficult for you to say no to your relative. But if there is a very clear code of conduct, all that you will need to say is that, look, this violates my code of conduct and I'm not willing to do this. That's one. And secondly, it is also a matter of pride that he is a competent officer, sincere officer. He goes by the rule book when it comes to ethics. He is an ethical officer. It builds your pride as a good officer who does the right things for the sake of the society. And these codes help us in so many other ways also. And this is probably not the best time for us to discuss about that. But broadly, the social codes, the moral codes uh, that are in vogue at any given point of time deserve to be followed thoroughly by all of us. I will just close this session by remembering what Immanuel Kant had said. Kant had described duties into two categories. One is a perfect duty, another is an imperfect duty. Now, a perfect duty is an inviolable kind of a duty that is non negotiable. In that, he puts honesty. Honesty in public office is an inviolable duty, something which is non negotiable. And that is what he calls as a perfect duty. And like say other responsibilities like sharing or cooperation or warmth, etc., these he considers them as imperfect duties. They are viable under certain circumstances. So no one, you can't be found wanting, or no one can find fault with you for violating an imperfect duty, but you would be charged for violating a perfect duty. That is what Immanuel Kant had said. We will talk about these philosophers at some other point of time, but broadly, I think I will conclude it at this point of time, saying that moral codes are very much prevalent in all the societies, be they in written form, be they in unwritten form, but they are all there and they exert enormous influence on our lives. So it is better to be conscious of these moral codes and then try and comply, uh, try and be compliant to them as much as we can for a smooth society. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you again.